All right, chapter 4, verse 1, King Nebuchadnezzar, to those of every people, nation, language, who live on the whole earth. I just kind of got to stop right there for a second. Did you catch that? If you're not really like dialed in, you'll just kind of fly over that. This is from Nebuchadnezzar, right? Daniel chapter 4 is not written by Daniel. Daniel chapter 4 is written by King Nebuchadnezzar, a pagan king. A king who didn't, that was back and forth, whether he believed in God or not, or who he was. One minute he's like, oh, he's the greatest God ever. The next minute he's like, bow down to this idol. This guy was somehow trusted to give us some very important information. And what he's going to do is he's going to teach us a lesson that God taught him the hard way. And it was really, really hard lesson. And he's going to, this whole chapter 4 is all about. And it's how to be faithful even in success. And you don't have to be the king of the world to be successful. You're all successful in your own place, your own way. You're doing your own thing, even in your own mind, whatever. We need to learn this lesson. This is a valuable lesson, and it can be one of the hardest lessons in life to learn, because the more successful we are, the less we tend to think we need God. The wealthy businessman can buy anything he needs. He has spent his life learning and investing and making good choices and smart decisions that what could possibly God do for him that he can't do for himself? We know the answer to that, but oftentimes he does not. Or a talented athlete, or maybe a talented musician. They have people knocking on their doors with offers of scholarships and sponsorships and high-dollar contracts or opportunities. They achieve their status through hard work, through dedication, through grit and determination. What could God possibly do for them that they can't do on their own? Again, we know. But oftentimes they don't. They can literally buy anything they want once they get a certain level. They can do whatever they want. They have people, bowing before them, basically, thinking they're great, telling them they're great their whole life. Well, King Nebuchadnezzar was not an athlete or a businessman. He was a king. But he wasn't just any old king of any old country. His goal was to be the king of the world, and he'd been conquering nation after nation after nation. His success was very high. He had accomplished very much. And after tasting success in the highest ways imaginable through conquering nations and building empires, he butted heads with God and learned a few things. God knocked him down a few times. And chapter 4 is Nebuchadnezzar passing that information on to us, basically saying, hey, you know what? I've made some mistakes. And if you can learn from this, we're all better off. And so he writes this for us. It gives us a series of lessons about remaining faithful even in the midst of success. So that's what we're going to look at today. We're calling it Lessons from a Wildly Successful Man who is a guy named Nebuchadnezzar. It starts in verse 1, and he goes on from that first one. He says, oh, from me to you. He says, may your prosperity increase, because I want you to be successful too, right? May your prosperity increase. I'm pleased to tell you about the miracles and wonders the Most High God has done for me. How great are his miracles and how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an eternal kingdom. His dominion is from generation to generation. Now, we're going to read what he does, and you think, really, you're glad about this? It's pretty crazy stuff. But it begins, Nebuchadnezzar's story begins with his greatest lesson ever. Lesson number 1, everything I have has come directly from God. If we can grasp that, that is so helpful in our life. No matter how much we have, whether it's a whole bunch, whether we're Elon Musk or whether you're me, everything you have has been given to you by God. God has done miracles and wonders for me, Nebuchadnezzar says. His miracles are great. His kingdom is eternal. His dominion lasts forever. That was a hard lesson for him to learn. It did not come easy, for sure. He was so wildly successful. He had so many other gods that he believed in, that he worshiped. He had temples for them, all the things, right? He didn't think he needed the God of Daniel, Yahweh. He learned otherwise. And so he uses the rest of chapter 4 to tell us how he learned it. And I'm just going to let him tell the story rather than try to abbreviate. Let's actually read what he writes down. In verse 4, I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at ease in my house and flourishing in my palace. I had a dream, and it frightened me. While in my bed, the images and visions in my mind alarmed me. So I issued a decree to bring all the wise men of Babylon to me in order that they might make the dream's interpretation known to me. When the magicians, mediums, Chaldeans, and diviners came in, I told them the dream, but they could not make its interpretation known to me. Finally, Daniel, named Belteshazzar, after the name of my God, and a spirit of the holy God is in him, God's is in him, came before me. I told him the dream. Belteshazzar, this is Daniel, right? A head of the magicians, because I know that you have the gift of the holy gods, and that no mystery puzzles you. Explain to me the visions of my dream that I saw and its interpretation. In the visions of my mind, I was lying in bed, and I saw this. Here's his dream. There was a tree, verse 10, in the middle of the earth, and it was very tall. The tree grew large and strong. Its top reached to the sky. It was visible to the ends of the earth. Its leaves were beautiful. Its fruit was abundant. And on it was food for all. Wild animals found shelter under it. The birds of the sky lived in its branches. Every creature was fed from it. As I was lying in my bed, I also saw in the visions of my mind a watcher, a holy one, coming down from the heaven. He called out loudly, "Cut down the tree and chop off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the animals flee from under it and the birds from its branches. But leave the stump and with its roots in the ground, and with a band of iron, a bronze around it, in the tender grass of the field." So his dream is about this tremendous tree, this huge monster tree. Everyone knows about it. Everybody can see it. Everyone is helped by it. Everybody is nourished by it. They're sheltered by it. And one day, a holy one, can't identify who this is, this holy one says to cut the tree down, which would make you want to know, what's this tree all about, right? What does this tree symbolize? Obviously, he believes this is a dream, is some type of message, right? Who is the tree? Is it a country? Is it a kingdom? I mean, what's going on here? What's it all about? Well, the rest of this Holy One's statement gives us a clue, because he goes on and says, let him be drenched. Let him, it's person, it's a man. This tree represents a man. Let him be drenched with dew from the sky and share the plants of the earth with the animals. Let his mind be changed from that of a human. Let him be given the mind of an animal for 7 periods of time, 7 years to us. So the tree, we know, is a person. It's a powerful person. It is a very successful person. This person will be cut down in some sense of the word, cast out to live in the wild for 7 years, and during that time, he will lose his mind and begin to think he's an animal. Pretty wild dream. That would be disturbing. That would make you want to call in the wise men. Tell me what this is all about. It goes on, verse 17. The word is by decree of the watchers, and the decision is by command from the holy ones. This is so that the living will know that the Most High is ruler over human kingdoms. He gives them to anyone he wants and sets the lowliest of people over them. So it's like, yeah, the kings aren't that impressive. This concludes his dream. He addresses Daniel in verse 18. This is the dream that I, King Nebuchadnezzar, had. Now, Belteshazzar, tell me the interpretation, because none of the wise men of my kingdom can make the interpretation known to me. But you can, because you have a spirit of the holy gods. Now, let's be honest. If you don't know anything about interpreting dreams, which most of us don't, that's not my thing, right? You could kind of read that and kind of have like a pretty good clue. I'm pretty sure I know what that's talking about. It's pretty easy to figure out. I mean, there's this great and powerful person, a tree, a king. It's going to be cut down, and it's be humbled before God, and he's going to be humbled until he understands that God's better than him, and then he'll understand where success really comes from. That's not that hard to figure out. Lesson 2, kind of between the lines here. If you don't humble yourself, God will be more than happy to do it for you. That's important for us to figure out. There's just simply no room for arrogance in the Christian faith. There just isn't. Verse 19, then Daniel, whose name is Belteshazzar, was stunned for a moment, and his thoughts alarmed him. King tells him the dream. He says, no, Daniel, tell me what it is. And Daniel is like, well, duh. I mean, so now he's stunned. I think he's stunned and alarmed for 2 different reasons. First, God is telling Nebuchadnezzar he's about to humble him. He's about to cut him off. cut him down and make him an animal. I mean, that's like, what? That's wild. But secondly, when he tells the king the meaning, he also knows this king has a reputation of killing the messenger. He's like, well, this could be the end of Daniel, So that's a little bit stunning, too. That's probably why the other wise men were like, oh, I can't figure that one out, King Neb. Well, I don't know. Like, they don't want to be the messenger. They don't want to be the one to tell him, hey, guess what, King Nebuchadnezzar, greatest king in the world, you're about to be humbled and thrown out into the wild. They're not going to say that, right? So Daniel takes a very diplomatic approach. The king said, Belteshazzar, don't let the dream or its interpretation alarm you. So obviously his facial expression was like, oh, okay. Belteshazzar answered, my lord, may the dream apply to those who hate you and its interpretation to your enemies. I sure hope this isn't about you because, boy, let me tell you something. This is going to be bad, right? Goes on in verse 20. The tree you saw, which grew large and strong, whose top reached to the sky, was visible to the whole earth, whose leaves were beautiful, its fruit abundant, and on it was food for all. Under it the wild animals lived, and in its branches the birds of the sky lived. That tree is you. It's you, Nebuchadnezzar. Your majesty. You've become great and strong. Your greatness has grown, even reaches the sky, and your dominion extends to the ends of the earth. The king saw a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven and saying, cut down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump with its roots in the ground with a band of iron and bronze around it in the tender grass of the field. Let him be drenched with the dew from the sky and share food with the wild animals for 7 periods of time. This is the interpretation, Your Majesty, and this is the decree of the Most High that has been issued against my lord the king. You, Nebuchadnezzar, will be driven away from people to live with the wild animals. You will feed on grass like the cattle, be drenched with dew from the sky for 7 periods of time, for 7 years, until you acknowledge that the Most High is ruler over human kingdoms and he gives them to anyone he wants. Whoa. Imagine that, telling it to Nebuchadnezzar, to literally the king of the world. I mean, what? Verse 26 is for the command to leave the tree's stump with its roots. He gives some hope here. Your kingdom will be restored to you as soon as you acknowledge that heaven rules. So really, it's on you. You can decide. This can last for a day, a week, a month, or we already know it's going to be 7 years. But when you decide that God is God and you are not, that's when you will come. That's when it comes back. Therefore, verse 27, may the advice seem good to you, my king. Separate yourself from your sins by doing what is right and from your injustices by showing mercy to the needy. Perhaps there will be an extension of your prosperity. Yeah, that took some guts. Lesson number 3. For us, heed the advice of godly people in your life, even when it's painful. That couldn't have been easy to hear. Daniel, number 1, had to be honest enough to say it, like, hey, I think there's a blind spot, like you're arrogant, Mr. Nebuchadnezzar, and God's going to humble you. Repent, turn away from your sins, start following the ways of Yahweh, God. He had all kinds of gods, so he's specifically talking about the God of Judah. Go back to treating people correctly, and you'll be okay. So Daniel tells the king straight up, God's going to humble you, but if you humble yourself first, you can save yourself a lot of pain. Wouldn't it be great if we actually listened to the warnings we got? We all get warnings all the time, I mean, doctor says don't eat that, it will kill you, but we eat that and it kills us. And we're all like, oh, I didn't see that coming. Doctors told you. I mean, they're not going to say that, but they're no doubt thinking it. Financial advisor, the Bible itself says, now don't go into debt, it'll enslave you, but then we do, and then we get enslaved, and then we're miserable. We're like, oh, I don't know what happened. It's like, oh, it's a choice. You did that. The teacher says, do your homework or you won't pass the class, but we don't, thinking, we're different, and then we don't, and we have to take the class over again. Fortunately, that never happened to me, but maybe it has to you sometime. Daniel tells Nebuchadnezzar, repent, humble yourself before God, or one of these days you're going to be running around like a wild animal. But he didn't. And just 12 months later, it all went down. Verse 28, all this happened to King Nebuchadnezzar. I'm kind of talking third person now. At the end of 12 months, he was walking on the roof of the palace, royal palace in Babylon. The king exclaimed, "Is this not Babylon the Great that I have built to be a royal residence of my vast power and for my majestic glory?" I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, he built that, right? He can think of all the kingdoms he conquered, all the people he kidnapped, like Daniel and Meshach, the three, and brought them in, all these people for the re-education centers that he sent them to. And so he can think of he's done so much. And he looks out and says, "Man, I'm pretty good. I am awesome." And verse 31 says, "While the words were still in the king's mouth, a voice came from heaven. King Nebuchadnezzar," we need Charlton Heston or something here, "to you it is declared that the kingdom has departed from you. You will be driven away from people to live with the wild animals. You will feed on grass like cattle for 7 periods of time until you acknowledge that the Most High is ruler over human kingdoms, and he gives them to anyone he wants. You're not all that much. You're in power because I put you there," God says. The moment the message against Nebuchadnezzar is fulfilled, he was driven away from people. He ate grass like cattle. His body was drenched with dew from the sky. His hair grew like eagle's feathers, and his nails like birds' claws. This egotistical, narcissistic, self-centered man was humbled by God. And I don't know how else to say it. He was stricken with mental illness. I mean, something in his mind clicked. All of a sudden, he thought he was an animal. This most powerful man on earth suddenly thought, "I guess I'll start eating grass now. I guess I'll stop taking care of myself. I'm going to live out in the wild with the other animals." And he began eating grass like a cow. It says sleeping outside, not bathing, not taking care of his personal hygiene. He basically grew claws. I mean, everything just, he went wild. He went wild. He lived and looked like an animal, and the people around him just kind of let him go. Like, what do you do with this? They didn't know how to handle it. And he ran off. So I'm thinking about this text this week, and it kind of struck me. And I don't know if this is a fair comparison or not. I could be way off. I've thrown it to a couple of people, like, "What do you think? Am I really off here?" And they're like, I don't know. Maybe some of you will have thoughts on this too. We have invested so much time and energy building self-esteem into our younger generation. I mean, it's almost like we've forgotten about, math. And I mean, they still learn all this stuff. But so much is built on self-esteem. Everybody gets a medal. We want to make sure you all feel good. Everybody knows no losing. Everybody's wonderful, right? Maybe we have damaged some of them. Not all of them. There's some great people out there, but maybe we've damaged some. Maybe we've created a large number of egotistical, narcissistic, self-centered children that have no humility before God, and they're suffering from widespread mental illness. They keep saying they are. All the warnings are out there. Mental illness, everybody, we got to figure this out and everything. Where some have become confused about their gender, and it's like, no, my inside is smarter than what my body tells me. I'm getting a different vibe from what my like that. That's a mental illness. That's not normal. That's not regular. Some believe they're actually animals. Parents and teachers could probably take note on this and be ready next time little Susie comes up and says, "Actually, my name's Sammy now," or when they suddenly decide that they're a cat. And maybe we should treat them a little differently than like, "Oh, here's a litter box for you, honey." Rather than putting tampons in boys' restrooms and litter boxes out for the furries, maybe we should look them in the eye and start telling them the truth. You're running from God. Humble yourself before you destroy yourself. It didn't help Nebuchadnezzar, but eventually he came to. And maybe that's too simple. I don't know. Just man, I was reading this. I thought, never in my life have I read the story and thought, we're seeing that. We're seeing that. So Nebuchadnezzar continues for 7 years. That's a long time. 7 years. Until something in his mind finally clicked. I don't know, something cleared up, and he remembered the dream, and he remembered what he was supposed to, the conclusion he was supposed to come to, and he humbles himself before God in verse 34. At the end of those days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, looked up to heaven, and my sanity returned. All of a sudden I thought, wait a minute, I'm not a cat. I'm not a cow. I'm whatever is animal, all the mixture of animals. I'm not no animal. Then I praised the Most High and honored, glorified him who lives forever. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are counted as nothing, and he does what he wants with an army of heaven and the inhabitants of the earth. There is no one who can block his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" Nebuchadnezzar thought he could. At that time, verse 36, my sanity returned to me, my majesty and splendor returned to me for the glory of my kingdom. My advisors and my nobles sought me out. I was reestablished over my kingdom. Even more greatness came to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise, exalt, and glorify the King of heavens. Now I see where it all came from. Because all his works are true, his ways are just. He is able to humble those who walk in pride. Lesson 4, God does what he wants, and no one can stop him. I read that, I thought, man, that's one of my favorite lines. I say it all the time. God does what he wants. It's like, whoa, right there, it's written right there. God does what he wants. No one can stop him. No one in heaven, no one on earth can stop him. He's God. And I'm not. Neither is Nebuchadnezzar, neither is anyone else, no matter how successful you've been. Whatever comes your way, whether you're a great musician, a great athlete, a great business person, a great whatever, it doesn't matter. Fill in the blank. It doesn't matter. You're not God. Four lessons we can learn from the most powerful man on earth at that time. Lessons from a man who didn't even believe in God until he learned the hard way. Oh, everything I have has come directly from God. If you don't humble yourself, God will be more than happy to do it for you. As awful as that sounds, is there anything more loving than that? For God to say, man, I just want to help you out. I'm going to let you be an animal for a while until you humble yourself and come back. I mean, wow. Lesson 3, heed the advice of godly people in your life, even if it hurts. Lesson 4, God does what he wants. No one can stop him. Live by these lessons. Tuck them away in your heart. Treat everything you own as a gift from God. If you humble yourself when you excel above the rest, I hope you have great prosperity in whatever you do, whatever your goals are, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. When that happens, keep yourself humble. Heed the advice of godly people, even when they're saying things you don't want them to say. Take it to heart. Maybe God has something there for you. And if you understand that God does what he wants, and there's nothing you can do to stop it, to stop him, you will have a good life. Lessons from Nebuchadnezzar that he learned the hard way.